The winning blueprint presents.
In the lab room.
While you're here, go ahead and sub up. Welcome. You are in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. Today, we find out what's new in San Diego with the San Diego Superchargers. We're out west with the San Diego Chargers. And so we'll be talking Chargers football today. And this is courtesy of YouTube subscriber Lay2 OTP, all the way from New Zealand. Good to have someone from all the way across the country subscribe to this page wanting to request the San Diego Chargers. So here we go. So we'll be talking about what's new in San Diego. But before you can get to what's new, you got to get rid of the old stuff. And so there are plenty. And when I say plenty, I mean plenty of changes in San Diego. Anytime you get a new GM, new head coach, you know the whole works is going to be unloaded. And so there are a lot of people being shown the door in San Diego. And that's the norm when you get a new regime. They come in and they want to clean house. They want to get all of the dead weight, all of the guys that they feel like don't fit what they want to do, don't fit what a San Diego Charger, in this case, looks like and is. And they want to push those guys out of the door. And they want to bring in guys that fit what they want to do, guys who they feel like can help this football team. And more importantly, guys who have the attitude of wanting to win, bringing a different culture into that building. And so that's what's going on right now in San Diego. And we'll get into the core of what's going on in San Diego and what's new there. So before we move on, let's handle a little bit of housekeeping. If you want your team, or any team for that matter, as we're really winding this thing down, getting down to the final few teams left, you want to see a team in particular, be the first to leave a comment at the bottom of this video stating the team that you want to see and simply the phrase next. So I don't care how you dress it up. We got next, this team is next, next, and the team. However you do it, just make sure the phrase next and the team that you want to see is in the comment section below first. Remember that, be the first to do it. So now let's move on to what's new in San Diego. And of course, to get to that, we got to go out with the old in San Diego. So to go out with the old, in with the new, you know how we do it here in the lab room. I need the help of not only my big board behind me, but of course, handy dandy pointer. I've got both. So that means I'm ready to talk San Diego Chargers football. We're starting out with the old here. And you look at this, this is a pretty extensive list here. A lot of guys up in the press box, or your coaches and GMs. Got a couple of players here. So Chargers not wasting any time cleaning house. And this is what usually happens when you start at the top and you're cleaning house up there. You know it's going to trickle down into the locker room. And that's exactly what happened in San Diego. So let's not delay. Let's get to some of the changes in San Diego. We start with GM AJ Smith. This was a long time coming. It's been a long time coming, but you know, change was gonna come. For AJ Smith. Yes, you did. Because AJ Smith, I think for too long, has been stuck in 2005 when this team was really, really good. One of the best teams in the league. I think AJ Smith fell in love with the idea that, hey, we've got a good team, we've got a good quarterback. We just need to stay the course. And you can fall into those ruts sometimes. But I thought that after a while, he'd wake up, smell the coffee, and realize, okay, I can't allow this thing to disintegrate right in front of my eyes. I can't allow this team to get old overnight. I got to make sure that I keep our guys hungry, because every year you hear the same thing. The San Diego Chargers are the most talented team in the National Football League, and they're going to do this and they're going to do that. They got LaDainian Tomlinson. They got a young quarterback in Phillip Rivers. And this is the team that you don't want to play in the AFC. You hear the same things every year. Antonio Gates was this. Look, they had one of the most talented teams. But the key word there is had. And they didn't get it done year after year after year. And after you do that for a while, guess what? That very talented team that you had 3-4 years ago, all of a sudden now, those guys are older. Some of those guys that were in the prime of their career are no longer in the prime of their career. All of a sudden, that running back that was all world, he's an average back. All of a sudden, that tight end that was a mismatch nightmare for every team in the league, all of a sudden now he's a step slower. All of a sudden, now those cornerbacks that could cover and run with any receiver in the league, they can't do that anymore. Things change over time, and it seemed like A.J. Smith never did. He was stuck in 2005 when this team was dominant, when this team was 13-3 and a Super Bowl contending type of football team. It's like he never woke up from that dream that was 2005, even though you didn't win the Super Bowl. It's like he got stuck in that frame of mind that we're that same team, and they weren't ever that same team again. Guys walked away. You lose valuable pieces along the way, and all of a sudden the San Diego Chargers just fell from grace. And they went from a team that, yeah, they might start slow, finish fast, or they might start fast, finish slow. Either way, they were going to find their way into the postseason because the AFC West stunk. You couldn't even count on the Chargers. By the end of A.J. Smith's tenure, you couldn't even count on the Chargers to make the postseason anymore. And so once that happened, couple that with the fact that he refused to get rid of Norv Turner, you had to say, all right, AJ, you got to go, man. You got to go. And so AJ Smith, no longer your GM in San Diego. And if you're a Chargers fan, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. It's a new day in San Diego. You look at head coach Norv Turner, and I actually love this guy as an offensive coordinator, not a head coach. Norv Turner is not a leader of men. Norv Turner is not a guy that can galvanize 53 players for one common goal, which is winning a Super Bowl. Can't do it. Won't do it. But what this guy can do and has shown over the life of his career, and he has a spotless track record in calling plays, in being a great offensive mind. You cannot dispute that one iota. However, we're talking about Norv Turner, the head coach, not Norv Turner, the offensive coordinator. And if we're talking about Norv Turner, the head coach, then you're talking about a guy that isn't going to get the job done year in, year out. I don't care how much talent you give this guy. He's not going to get all of those talented players to play their best football at the very same time and win games when it matters the most. Norv Turner, no longer your coach in San Diego. That's a very good thing. You look at offensive coordinator Hal Hunter. He was simply a casualty of Norv Turner no longer being there. Here's a guy that got the job because someone else walked away from the job early on in the 2012 offseason. And so Hal Hunter was thrusted into the position. He's really the offensive line coach, or was the offensive line coach. And Norv Turner was your play caller. So Hal Hunter, he had the offensive coordinator title, namesake, but he really wasn't the offensive coordinator. So he's no longer there either. This is one of those rare situations where a coach walks in, likes what one of the coordinators was doing, and left him alone. And the defensive coordinator is not on this list because he's still here. John Pagano did a fabulous job the last 2 seasons in San Diego. And your new head coach comes in and says, you know what? Don't worry about it. You're fine. I like what you're doing. I'm not going to mess with that. I'm not a defensive-minded head coach. I'm an offensive-minded guy. You stay over there, I'll stay over here, and we'll make beautiful music together. So you got the same defensive coordinator in John Pagano. Everybody else, hit the door, pack your bags, go ahead, here's your pink slip. So we move on to the players now. Running back, Jackie Battle. 3 yards in a cloud of dust guy. I do not like Jackie Battle as a running back in this league. He does nothing for you. He's a guy that annually averages less than 4 yards a carry, and it's nothing that he can help. This is what he is. This is the type of back that he is, a guy that isn't going to blow you away with speed, doesn't possess any speed, isn't going to shake anyone, doesn't have any wiggles, and he's not an overly strong back. He's average, as average can get. He's no longer on your roster. You won't miss Jackie Battle. He was a part of that running back by committee group that always had to step in, and you always had to have running backs on standby in San Diego because, as we know, Mr. Matthews always gets hurt. Whether it's a collarbone, you always cringe when this guy falls because that collarbone could go at any time. And so guys like Jackie Battle had to be on standby. Not a good look if you're a Chargers fan. No more Jackie Battle is a good look if you're a Chargers fan. Look at running back Curtis Brinkley. To me, he's a bowling ball. A little small, 5'9", 210-pound running back. Reminds you a lot of a guy like Mike Tolbert. Tolbert is a lot bigger, but both built low to the ground, low center of gravity. It's solidly built, and a solid back, again, much like Jackie Battle, doesn't do anything extraordinary. Doesn't change the game in any way. You look at Curtis Brinkley and you say, okay, what are you going to do for me? What do you bring to the table that I don't already have? And you sit there and you think for a while and you can't come up with anything. And so when that starts to happen, it's time for guys to move on. No more Curtis Brinkley on your football team. You look at wide receiver C.J. Ajira Tutu. And I remember when C.J. Ajira Tutu stepped onto this roster and came out of nowhere. It was a season where the Chargers were decimated by injuries at the wide receiver position. And Phillip Rivers, frankly, did not have anyone to throw the football to. And out of nowhere appears Ajira Tutu, and he's going off. He's catching 45-yard passes here, 55-yard passes there, 32-yarders here. I'm like, wow, this guy could be something, much like a Michael Floyd type of guy, long, a guy with a huge catch radius that can come in out of nowhere and play good football for you. Nope, that was an anomaly. You never saw that kind of production out of C.J. Ajira Tutu again, and thus he's no longer on this roster. He's gone. You look at tight end Dante Rosario, and Dante Rosario is a solid tight end. He does a little bit of blocking, does a little bit of catching, but does none of them great. And this guy had 3 touchdowns on the 2012 season. All of them, I repeat, all of them coming in week 2 versus the Tennessee Titans. And you're thinking, hey, this guy just got me 3 touchdowns. He's going to be a heck of a target. If nothing else, a great target in the red zone. Didn't sniff the end zone, not another time the rest of the season. And so Dante Rosario, average tight end, can block, can do a little bit of catching. He's not a guy you're going to miss per se. He's now in Dallas, no longer on your roster. You look at tight end Randy McMichael. I remember the Miami days of Randy McMichael when this guy was a big-time pass-catching threat at the tight end position. Those days are long gone. Here's a guy that'll catch 15 to 30 balls for anywhere from 250 to 330 yards, get you a touchdown or 2, do a little bit of blocking in the run game, but that's about it. And so Randy McMichael is another one of these guys that you look at when you start assessing players on your roster and you say, okay, can we not get a guy that's 8 years younger than him to do exactly what he's doing? A guy that can come in, block, catch an occasional pass, and do a little bit of everything. Can't we get a guy a lot younger, more athletic than him to do that? And then you look around the room and everybody says, yeah, we probably can. And that's why a guy like Randy McMichael is no longer on your football team. And so you move on to offensive tackle Jared Gaither, a sore spot for a lot of San Diego Chargers fans, and rightfully so. You feel ripped off here. You feel like it was false advertising when you got Jared Gaither. You thought you were getting a left tackle that was going to hold it down on that left side of your offensive line, protect Phillip Rivers' blind side. You felt like you were okay over there. It's almost like that bag of chips, that huge bag of chips that you get, and you open it up only to find that 2/3 of the bag is air. And you just spent $1.19 on something that is 2/3 of the way empty before you even took a bite. How disappointing is that, right? Same thing with Jared Gaither. You open up the bag and there's nothing but 10 chips in the bag. You open up the Jared Gaither bag and there are about 15 starts in it, and about 2 of them were good. What can you do? What can you do except admit you made a mistake and move on? The Chargers have done that. No more Jared Gaither on this roster. You look at offensive guard Tyrone Green, and look, this offensive line was not good for San Diego in 2012. And there weren't a lot of pieces you could pull off of this line and feel really good about doing so. And Tyrone Green was solid. I don't want to say that the guy was great because he wasn't. I don't want to say this guy was an atrocity because he wasn't. He was solid. And someone else thought he was solid too because he's no longer on your roster. He's now with the New England Patriots. So they feel like, hey, if nothing else, this guy can come in and be some depth for us along our offensive line. So that's, to me, fair enough. Solid guy that I don't know if you necessarily want to start, but if you want to put him in a pinch, sure, go right ahead. I think he'll do an adequate job in that capacity. You look at offensive guard Luis Vasquez. He was the exception to the rule on this offensive line in 2012. I just told you that there weren't a lot of pieces to be pulled off of this offensive line. Well, he was one of them. He was a guy, he was the best offensive lineman on this line in 2012, has been very consistent over the last 3 seasons for the Chargers. And the Broncos, a team right up the street, noticed it as well, realized that the Chargers were hesitating to re-sign this guy. The Broncos stepped in, snatched away Luis Vasquez from the Chargers. That's a guy that you're definitely going to miss on this offensive line in San Diego. You look at safety Atari Bigby. Solid safety, doesn't make any plays anymore. I remember when he was in Green Bay, hard-hitting safety, would make plays on the football as well. He's not doing that anymore. He's a guy that can make plays on the football, will pick off a pass or two, but his best football is behind him. And what the Chargers have been trying to find for a long time is that guy across from Eric Weddle. They got Eric Weddle in place. They know what they're getting out of Eric Weddle. They need someone across from him. He was one of those guys, and it just didn't work out. They felt like we need something more. We're looking for something more at the strong safety position across from Eric Weddle, and Atari Bigby was not it. And a lot of these guys are victims of this new regime coming in and just looking at these guys at face value, watching a little bit of film and saying, nah, he's not going to cut it on my roster. And I think Atari Bigby fell prey to one of those type of moves. You look at safety Corey Lynch, same deal. Another guy that started a few games for you at the safety position across from Eric Weddle. I like Corey Lynch. I've always admired a guy like Corey Lynch who's a try-hard guy. You can never fault him or never say that Corey Lynch isn't giving you everything he's got, because he does on every single snap. He's going to hustle on special teams. And one thing I can always say about Corey Lynch that I really admired, and I talked about admiring this guy, is he's always around a football. And there's something to be said about a guy that always is around the football. I don't know how he does it, but he does. He had 2 interceptions for you in 2012. It just always seems like Corey Lynch is around the football, but it wasn't enough to keep this guy on the roster. I thought this was one of those guys, why not keep him around as a platoon safety, as a guy that's going to give you maximum effort on special teams as well. But this new regime saw differently. He's no longer on the roster. You look at cornerback Antoine Cason, another one of these guys that's extremely talented, very long, can make plays on the football, but in the same breath, very inconsistent. He's probably one of those guys that drove Charger fans crazy because one week this guy is playing stellar football. The next week, this guy can't stay in front of a receiver to save his life. He's a durable guy. He plays 16, 15 games just about every season, but the consistency is probably what was the thorn in your side in San Diego. He's no longer a Charger cornerback. You look at cornerback Quentin Jammer. Here's a long-time corner for this football team. San Diego Charger lifer. And, I mean, this guy has been with you for 11 seasons, and you can't think of too many times. You might be able to count on your fingers on one hand how many times this guy did not start for you on a Sunday at the cornerback position since arriving in San Diego. He's been that consistent, that solid, that reliable. The only thing I can say is Father Time is catching up with Quentin Jammer. He's a physical corner that wants to get in your face and play press coverage. But the problem is when you're no longer athletically gifted and inclined to do that anymore, you can't. You can't come up and press a guy like Torrey Smith anymore. He'll run by you. Ask Champ Bailey in the AFC divisional round what happened when he decided to go press Torrey Smith. And you're not the 24-year-old Champ Bailey. You're the 34-year-old Champ Bailey. Ask him what happened. You can't do it anymore. And Quentin Jammer is one of those guys that wants to be physical. He's a guy that loves to come up and tackle and support in the run game. Wants to get in the face of a receiver, jam him up, and alter his route. You miss? You don't get off a good jam? Guess what? You're now 33 years old, and you can't catch up. That step that you used to be able to make up, we call it make-up speed. You don't possess it anymore. You're beat now. And so a guy like Quentin Jammer can fall prey to that. He's no longer in San Diego. It was a great run, though, in San Diego while it lasted. Look at linebacker Antoine Barnes. This one, head scratcher, because this guy got you 11 sacks just 2 seasons ago. I mean, in 2011, Antoine Barnes was getting to the quarterback. The next year, he has a down year, gets you 3 sacks. He's no longer on the roster. I don't understand. Why couldn't you hold on to this guy and see if the light bulb will come back on in 2013? I mean, you don't luck up and get double-digit sacks in this league. Either you're a guy that can get to the quarterback or you're not. And Antoine Barnes was getting to the quarterback. Now, he didn't get to the quarterback as much in 2012, but cut the guy some slack. There were some injuries on that Chargers defense, and maybe he just had an off year rushing the quarterback. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. Chargers said, hey, 3 sacks isn't enough. Don't know if he was asking for too much money or not. Doesn't matter. At the end of the day, Antoine Barnes no longer on your football team. He's now a New York Jet. And I forgot to mention a few guys up here, but Kason is now a Cardinal and Jammer is now in Denver, just in case you didn't know. So now we move on to linebacker Sean Phillips. Look, Sean Phillips is a guy that has gotten to the quarterback for you for many, many years, and he's still getting to the quarterback. Got you 9.5 sacks a season ago. But again, it's a new day. It's a new movement in San Diego, and guys like Sean Phillips seem not to be welcomed in San Diego anymore. And so I think he can still play. I think he can still help this football team, but I guess management thought it might have been time to move on, and maybe Sean Phillips was ready for a change of scenery. As a veteran in this league, you want a chance to win. It's not always a situation where the team doesn't want you anymore. If you're a player and you feel like you can still play and you haven't won yet, sometimes you feel like I just want to win at this point. I've made my money. I've had my fun in this league. I've made my mark. Now I just want to be a part of a winner. And I think Sean Phillips, Quentin Jammer, they both feel the same way. I want to be a part of a winner. So what do? They feel like San Diego isn't going in the right direction right now in terms of having a chance to win a Super Bowl right now, because these guys are both running out of time, aging veterans. And so what do? Hey, man, what are you about to do? I'm trying to win, man. So where you going? Denver. Guess. All right, well, I'm coming with you. And so, just like Quentin Jammer did, Sean Phillips is now in Denver. And look, they've got a legitimate shot of getting some things done in Denver. That's a really good football team over there. But isn't it ironic that all of your players worth having are being snatched up by the Denver Broncos? They take Luis Vasquez from you. They take Quentin Jammer. Now they're taking Sean Phillips as well. I mean, wow. Stop letting the Broncos steal your players. You look at linebacker Takeo Spikes. Man, this guy has been playing in the National Football League since 1998. Wowzers. And we're not talking about an offensive lineman. We're not talking about a place kicker here. We're talking about a linebacker since 98. Whew. That's some longevity for you. And the man is still playing at a relatively high level at that. Takeo Spikes is a guy that helps you on the field as well as off the field. I think this guy is one of the best leaders in a locker room in this league. I love Takeo Spikes, but the only problem with Takeo Spikes is this guy is a loser. Never been to the postseason a day in his career. Probably will never sniff the postseason. And how do you play as many seasons as he has and never get lucky once? I mean, get lucky one time and say, hey, I made it to the postseason. Maybe you don't win a game. Maybe you never advance out of the wild card round, but at least say, I made it to the postseason. This guy can't even say that. And so Takeo Spikes is a lovable loser. I guess there's nothing wrong with that because the guy's had an extremely productive career. But there's something to be said for never, and I mean never, making the postseason in a 15-year career. I don't know, man. Let's just call that bad luck is what we'll call that. But he's no longer on your football team. You look at linebacker Demario Williams. Solid linebacker, very athletic, can do some things in the passing game for you. I think that's where he makes his mark in the league, is a guy that can play over the tight end on the weak side of your defense. Not a guy you want necessarily sticking his nose in the run game. He's not stout at the point of attack. But out in space, Demario Williams can help you. He's a guy that gets his hands on a lot of footballs. Solid defender, but he's no longer in San Diego. You move on to defensive end Antonio Garay. Here's a guy that every time I think of him, I think of haircuts and different designs in his head and colors and things of that nature. Less about the player, more about the flash. I need more substance from Antonio Garay. When he's playing good football, he's a solid player. But sometimes I think he's thinking more about other things other than football sometimes. And so he's no longer on your team. He's now a New York Jet. Let's see if he can start playing football more and cutting designs in his hair less. You look at defensive end Von Martin. Solid rotational depth defensive end. Can get pressure on the quarterback occasionally. Solid in the run game. Again, not a guy that's going to change the game for you. And so guys like him are dispensable. You can find another guy like him. And so he's now in Miami, no longer on your roster. You round out this group with nose tackle Abreu Franklin. I remember when this guy was one of the best in the business at the nose tackle position when he was in San Francisco. That was a while back. You got this guy on the back end of his career. He's no longer the guy that he once was. And so you had a little bit of Abreu Franklin. He didn't make that much of a difference. He's now moving on. He's no longer on your roster. So, wow, that was a lot. And you look at the list, and it was a lot there. And so anytime you get new coaches, new GM, this is what happens. Exodus. Everyone out. Now we'll go in with the new and see what these guys decided to bring in with the San Diego Chargers. So we go in with the new now with the San Diego Chargers, and let's start at the top. Get rid of your GM. You bring in new GM Tom Telesco. I like this guy. He's young. He's hungry. He's vibrant. and he has a plan. I love Tom Telesco. I like the way this guy thinks. I like the way this guy speaks. I think he understands what this team needs. They need a shakeup. That's why you see all these guys no longer on this roster. For too long, things were stale in San Diego. They were too much the same. Everything just stayed status quo in San Diego. And Tom Telesco comes in and he understands, I got to shake this thing up. Shake it up and see what happens from there. But I cannot let this thing stay the same. He's come in, he's made changes, he's got everyone with a pep in their step in San Diego. And so I like Tom Telesco. I like his message. I like the direction he has this franchise going in. I like your head coach now, Mike McCoy, offensive-minded guy. So not a change from North Turner in terms of the direction of the coach, offensive-minded head coach, but that's where the similarities end. Here's a guy with his first head coaching job, unlike North Turner, who has been a head coach numerous times in this league and failed every single time. Here's a guy that's getting his first shot. And this is young. This is all young up here. Tom Telesco, your GM, young. Head coach Mike McCoy, young. So a lot of young guys coming in and trying to turn this thing around in San Diego. I absolutely love it. Love it because the San Diego Chargers need a breath of fresh air. Here are two guys that are going to deliver that oxygen mask to this franchise. You look at offensive coordinator Ken Wisenhunt. I thought that this guy was pushed out of the door in Arizona unjustifiedly so. And I think he'll be a head coach one day again in this league because I think Ken Wisenhunt is an excellent head coach. But for the time being, he's going to be an excellent offensive coordinator in San Diego. I think that him and Mike McCoy will get on the same page and they will orchestrate a offense that is really going to be successful in San Diego if the pieces fit in the puzzle. But I love Ken Wisenhunt. I love his creativeness, and I think it's going to help this San Diego Chargers offense. You look at running back Danny Woodhead. I tell you what, Phillip Rivers was probably jumping for joy when he found out that the San Diego Chargers had acquired Danny Woodhead. And he's been lost. He's been like a lost puppy, has Phillip Rivers been ever since he lost Darren Sproles. You never really know what you got until it's gone. And when Darren Sproles left, a good chunk, a good portion of this offense left with him because there's nothing like dumping the football off on a 2-yard pass out in the flats to your running back and watching them run 59 yards for a touchdown. Nothing like it. Ask any quarterback around. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like dumping off a screen 5 yards in the backfield and watching that running back pick through the garbage, the trash, and find his way into the end zone 79 yards later. How can you beat that? There's nothing like being in 3rd and 7 at your own 17, dumping it off and watching this guy get 17 yards and giving you some breathing space to extend the drive. Nothing like dumping it off on 3rd and 8 or 3rd and goal from the 8 and watching this guy zig and zag and maneuver into the end zone, or beating a guy in one-on-one coverage as you flank him out wide and watching a linebacker helplessly be beaten to a pulp by a jitterbug like Darren Sproles. I tell you what, Phillip Rivers has missed that part of this offense desperately. And so now he gets it all back with Danny Woodhead. So Phillip Rivers is loving this. This is an awesome move for the San Diego Chargers. This was a match made in heaven. The Patriots' loss is your game. We look at wide receiver Deion Butler. Solid receiver drafted in the 3rd round by the Seattle Seahawks about 3 seasons ago. Hasn't panned out the way they thought he was going to be. Here's an athletic guy out of Penn State you thought that was going to come in, be a speedster, do a little bit of something in the returns game as well. Hasn't amounted to much in this league, We'll see if him coming to San Diego gives him new life in this league. You look at tight end John Phillips. This is a guy I liked with the Cowboys. Thought he had a lot of potential, and he got injured. And then I didn't see a lot of John Phillips anymore. I like this guy. He's a big 6'5" tight end that can catch the ball, has very soft hands, is deceptively quick. He's not fast. Don't want you to make the mistake of thinking this guy is fast because he's quick. He's quick and subtle in and out of his breaks, so he creates a bit of separation. Not a lot, but enough that he can get his paws on the football. I like John Phillips. I think he's going to help you in the run game because he can block, but he will also catch the occasional pass. I like John Phillips. I like this acquisition to your football team. I think he'll help you. You look at offensive tackle Max Starks. Look, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. So you go out and you get a guy like Max Starks. Look, Max Starks is a lot of things. Great, he is not. Solid, he is. Look, you put this guy in if you need to. I don't think you want to start Max Starks. And the way I see it in San Diego right now, look, we're just going to throw as many offensive linemen at these two tackle positions and see who sticks. Sometimes it works, other times it don't. I tell you what, though, you drafted DJ Fluker. He's going to man up one of these tackle positions. I don't know if you have left or right in mind, but DJ Fluker is going to start at one of these tackle positions. You've got about 3 or 4 tackles that are vying for that other tackle position, the one that DJ Fluker does not occupy. And so Max Starks is one of those guys that will compete. I don't think he's going to be your starter ultimately, but he may make this roster as a guy that will back up. And in Pittsburgh, he was always on call, and I think that's what he will be in San Diego as well. You look at offensive tackle King Dunlap. Solid tackle. I thought he was overwhelmed in Philadelphia at left tackle, but if you stick this guy in at the right tackle position, I'm not sure he won't be able to do his job very adequately. I think on the right side, King Dunlap can be effective. Now, the only issue I have with King Dunlap being on this roster at right tackle, if in fact he is your right tackle, is that in this division, particularly in the AFC West, there are a lot of good pass rushers on that right side. And so you can't run. You can't hide. If you don't have a good right tackle, you will be exposed in this division because the Chiefs put guys on the field that can rush the passer on both edges. The Broncos do the same exact thing. And so Justin Houston or Von Miller could be lining up in front of that right tackle. That's trouble if he can't block. The Raiders are coming along. They're getting guys that they feel like can get after the quarterback as well. So you can't hide guys at right tackle in that division particularly. And so I hope that King Dunlap is as good as I think he can be at right tackle because he was subpar at the left side in Philadelphia, but I don't think he's a left tackle in this league. I think he's a right tackle. Let's see if he can get the job done for you at right tackle. Center Rich Orenberger. And here's a guy you got from the Cardinals. Solid center. Really has never been given the keys to the center position. I think he will get an opportunity in San Diego. We will see. If he does not win the job outright, he'll be a guy that can be waiting in the wings as someone that will give you some depth along this offensive line. So I definitely see Rich Orenberger helping you in the 2013 season. You look at offensive guard Chad Reinhardt. Solid guy that was playing really good football in Buffalo where you got him from till he got injured. And when he's not injured, solid guy in the interior of this offensive line. Definitely could see Chad Reinhardt starting for you in 2013. Again, much like Rich Orenberger, if he does not win a starting job on this offensive line, he's a guy that will probably make this roster as depth along this offensive line. You look at cornerback Derek Cox. Love this signing. This is a guy that's a young corner going into the prime of his career. If Derek Cox, and if is a big word, biggest 2-letter word in the dictionary. What if my head was turned backwards and I could see forwards? So if is a big word. What if you were a millionaire? If is a huge word. If Derek Cox can stay healthy, this guy could be one of the best corners in the league. I feel like he's not afraid. He challenges receivers. He makes plays on the football, has really good hands. So if you make a mistake around Derek Cox, most times than not, you're going to pay for it. I like this guy. Must stay healthy. And for what you're paying him, I think you got away with a steal here. Guy going into the prime of his career, if he can stay healthy, you've got yourself a gem on your hands in Derek Cox. Cornerback Johnny Patrick. This is one of those guys you hope was given up on too soon. New Orleans Saints drafted Johnny Patrick just a few seasons ago. And he came in the league and wasn't as effective as the Saints hoped he'd be. They cut him loose. In this offseason, you pick him up, and you're hoping that Johnny Patrick just needs some good coaching and some direction. And if you point him in the right direction, he can take off. If you get lucky, you might have found yourself a diamond in the rough. If not, you just cut him loose. It's really a low risk, high reward proposition here for the Chargers in the form of Johnny Patrick. You look at linebacker Dwight Freeney. Big pickup for you in the offseason after the injury. And you feel really bad for Melvin Ingram. He gets hurt. He's finally going to get a chance in 2013 to be the guy at outside linebacker. He gets injured. He's going to miss the whole entire season. You got to do something. You start scrambling. You go call up Dwight Freeney. You bring him in. I really don't like this move because Dwight Freeney came from a 3-4 defense in Indianapolis. I thought that he struggled at times making that transition. This is a guy that belongs with his hand in the dirt in a 4-3 defense, as a 4-3 defensive end, not an outside linebacker. If you're still playing a 3-4 defense, which you are because you have your same defensive coordinator in John Pagano, I don't really see the fit here. I don't know if this is a logical fit for Dwight Freeney and the San Diego Chargers. But look, maybe you saw something, or maybe Dwight convinced you when you talked to him that, hey, another year under his belt in a 3-4 defense, well, it'll be different. He'll be better. I don't know. Maybe you just feel like this guy can get to the quarterback naturally. I don't like this move. We'll see if it works. Let's hope I'm wrong. But I don't think this is going to benefit you as much as you probably think it will. You look at defensive end Jarius Wynn. I'm more excited about him being on your team than I am Dwight Freeney because Jarius Wynn is a guy that from the defensive end, that 5 technique position in a 3-4 defense, can get to the quarterback. I mean, you look at what he was able to do last season in limited duty. I mean, this guy played in 7 games, didn't start, and got 2 sacks. So I look at a guy winning Green Bay, started a few games, was able to get 3 sacks in the season. Last year, he was able to get 2 sacks in limited duty. I like this guy. I like what he's bringing to the table, and he's versatile. In Tennessee last year, he got you 2 sacks, didn't start, didn't play in half of the games, got you 2 sacks in a 4-3 defense. In Green Bay, previous to that, got you 3 sacks in a 3-4 defense at the 5 technique. And so that's versatility, folks. Can play in a 4-3, 3-4 defense, can get pressure on the quarterback from either way. I like him. I like this guy a lot, and I like the fit in this John Pagano-led defensive attack. And so I think Jarius Wynn is a guy that will be depth on this defensive line that can come in and give you some really good snaps and possibly get to the quarterback like this move. And so that's the end with the new portion in terms of offseason acquisitions and new coaches and GMs and things of that nature. Let's move on to draft picks. And I thought the Chargers did a wonderful job in the limited amount of picks that they had of getting guys that can help them right away. And so if you're looking for an extensive breakdown of the 2013 NFL draft of the San Diego Chargers, I will redirect you to the 2013 NFL draft wrap-up of every team that I've done in the league, including the San Diego Chargers. So if you're looking for a really extensive breakdown, thorough breakdown of every single player in this draft for the Chargers, go to the 2013 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series. So we look at offensive tackle DJ Fluker in the first round. He will be starting on this offensive line. You look at linebacker Manti Te'o in the second round out of Notre Dame. He will be starting at linebacker for this football team. Wide receiver Keenan Allen out of Cal. Won't be surprised if this guy is starting at some point in this season in the 3rd round. You look at cornerback Steve Williams in the 5th round, defensive end Torrey Williams in the 6th round, and rounding out your draft in the 7th round, quarterback Brad Sorensen. And so those are guys that are going to make this roster. Now we go from there to guys who are scratching and clawing, trying to make a dent, an imprint on this roster. I'm talking about undrafted rookie free agents. Let's run down the list very quickly. We start with quarterback Mike Herman out of RPI, running back Michael Hill out of Missouri Western State, wide receiver Luke Tasker out of Cornell, tight end Dallas Walker out of Western Michigan, tight end Ben Cotton out of Nebraska, tight end David Wolf out of Utah, offensive tackle Nick Beckton out of Virginia Tech, offensive tackle Randy Richards out of Missouri State, defensive back Jaleel Ade out of Central Michigan, defensive back Greg Brown out of Kansas, defensive back Marcus Cromartie out of Wisconsin, defensive back Chibukem Okoro out of Wake Forest, defensive back Josh Johnson out of Purdue, linebacker Frank Beltre out of Townsend, linebacker Dan Malls out of Toledo, linebacker Devon Walker out of Southeastern Louisiana, defensive end Brandon Moore out of Texas, nose tackle Jamarcus McFarland out of Oklahoma, nose tackle Kwame Gathers out of Georgia, nose tackle Brian Gerardo out of South Carolina, and rounding out the group, punter Richard Kent out of Vanderbilt. So we're talking about 21 undrafted rookie free agents in all. Look, when you get a new coaching staff and you see all the traffic up here, you see all of the collateral damage in the out with the old section. So you know there are some spots on this roster to be had. New coaching staff means a lot of guys are being evaluated. You could see 3, 4, 5 of these guys ease their way onto this roster. I could see 1 or none. Anything could happen. You just don't know what this coaching staff is thinking. But anytime you get a new staff, guys that are undrafted have the most opportunity to crack a roster. And so if you're one of these 21 guys, you got to feel really good about your chances to make this San Diego Chargers roster. And so we go from there, switching gears to any philosophical changes in San Diego. So you start with any philosophical changes for the San Diego Chargers, and you got to start on the offensive side of football. Your new head coach, Mike McCoy, is an offensive-minded guy. Your offensive coordinator now, Ken Wisenhunt, also an offensive-minded guy. Coming from Arizona as a head coach, he's still probably got a little bit of that head coaching buzz still generating through his body. And so I think they're going to get together, put their minds together, and come up with a game plan that is going to help this offense along. Look, we could have the Phillip Rivers discussion right now, but I'm going to hold off until a later date and time. I don't think this is the place nor the time for that discussion. But I will say this offense needs to take a huge step forward if the San Diego Chargers team wants to make the postseason. Inconsistency is the word that pops into my head when I think about this San Diego Chargers offense. 1 week, it's really good, like it was against the Pittsburgh Steelers. 1 week, it's anemic, like it was against pick an opponent. Try Denver, for instance. I mean, there are weeks where this team just doesn't look like a football team that can win games in this league. I was really high on the Chargers last year. They start 2-0. They've got the Atlanta Falcons coming into town, and they just lay an egg, an absolute dud at home. And they did that several times in 2012. And you just ask yourself, what happened? And so hopefully you don't have games like that this year where you're not even in the ball game. Hopefully with this new coaching staff, you're in every single game. And I think offensively, what you'll see as a philosophical change is that this Chargers team will run the football and run it effectively, whether it be Ryan Matthews or not. You're going to run the football effectively. Of course, Mike McCoy coming over from Denver, where running the football was a priority at times. You definitely want to pass the football. And you saw what Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos were able to accomplish in 2012. And a lot of people always make the mistake of thinking that Peyton Manning and his offense is pass oriented and Peyton Manning led offenses don't run the football. Peyton Manning wants to run the football. And I thought they ran the football effectively in Denver. And I think they're going to do much of the same in San Diego. They're going to run the football, but I think less of this offense. And under North Turner, you push the ball up the field a lot. A lot of five-step drops, a lot of turning your back to the defense, a lot of routes that end up in 15 and 20-yard passes down the field. I think a lot of that is going to be dialed back. A lot of shorter passes, a lot of passes coming out of the hands of Phillip Rivers a lot quicker, getting him in a rhythm. I think that's the key for Phillip Rivers is getting him in a rhythm because when Phillip Rivers starts off bad, it's all bad and there's no coming back. Phillip Rivers is a guy that when he's hot, he can throw that ball into some tight spaces and really make some throws and throw the ball up to guys and give them opportunity. We know that Phillip Rivers is a guy that he's at his best when guys are 6'5", that he can throw the football up to and have them go up and make plays for him. You get a guy like Keenan Allen out of the draft. You also have Denario Alexander. Floyd is still there. And so you've got some huge targets for Phillip to just loft it up for and allow them to go and make a play on the football. That's when he's at his best. I expect them to do a lot of that as well. But keep it simple is what I think Mike McCoy is going to do. Run the football. Now that you have Danny Woodhead, I think he's going to change the game in San Diego and change up this playbook as well. You're going to get him the football, much like you used to with Darren Sproles. That part of your playbook is now back in play. Dump offs, swing screens, regular screens, middle screens, draws. All of those things are back in play in San Diego. And you're going to utilize Danny Woodhead to the maximum capacity in San Diego. This offense is going to be a lot faster in terms of getting the football out of Phillip Rivers' hands. I think a lot of times with North Turner as your offensive coordinator, that ball can stick in the quarterback's hand because the routes are very long developing. Guys are running combination routes 15 and 20 yards down the field. With Mike McCoy, they're going to be drags and crossers, things that are going to be quick, 5 yards down the field, 7 yards down the field. Get the football out of Phillip Rivers' hands. Get some tempo to this offense. Run the football. Get the ball to your backs out of the backfield. I think this offense is going to be more predicated on getting a better tempo, more production out of your offense in terms of moving the sticks. Everything doesn't have to be pushing the ball down the field. You'll get your plays down the field. Mike McCoy will attack down the field, but he's more interested in getting 3 more downs to call 3 more plays on the offensive side of football, and you will notice that in 2013. You look at the defensive side of football, not a lot is going to change here. Now, the personnel is definitely going to change. There's no more Antoine Cason. There's no more Quentin Jammer. There's no more Sean Phillips. So, yes, defensively, it's going to look different. No more Takeo Spikes. So there is definitely going to be a change in terms of personnel, but in terms of scheme, John Pagano, still your defensive coordinator. He's still going to hammer out a defense that is going to be aggressive, get after the quarterback, try to make some plays in his secondary with Eric Weddle and company. Now you have Derek Cox, another guy that can make plays on the football. So I think the same message is going to be universal along this defense, even though the players are different. Hey, let's get pressure on the quarterback. Let's force these teams into mistakes. Let's get off the field on third downs. I think John Pagano is going to continue to see this defense ascend. And I think defensively, this team wasn't that bad. It was offensively where this team struggled in 2012. And I expect them to be solid on the defensive side of the football once again in 2013 under the direction of John Pagano. And so that's what's new in San Diego.
Like the content? Want more? Sub up.